Yeah, right.
You're right.
And sing Kumbaya.
Let me see.
We are live. The floor is yours, Jeff.
So
You
I
are in
will,
control as well.
I'll call the meeting to order. Let's see, it is 7:06. This meeting of the Grand Island Conservation Advisory Board, October 28th, 2021. Let's see, we're going to, excuse. We have Paul, Jerry,
Just so you know, it's always a backup.
and Tom. Sam, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a 10-member board, which we'll discuss. We have an alternate opening, but we can fill that whenever you're ready to advertise with the rest of the boards. They usually do that in the spring.
Just officially, it's a 9-member board with 2
alternates,
alternates, just so you know.
right.
Yep.
But we have 1 vacant alternate now. So that means Liz was our first alternate. She is now a voting member of the Conservation Advisory Board.
That's got to be appointed by, that's got to be made official through the town board though. So we'll have to do a motion.
After approval.
It's not quite there yet, close.
Yes. But tonight you are a voting member. We're not at our 9.
In case anyone wasn't aware, so Alice left. I think everybody knew that, so absolutely. Yep, she did a great job.
Alice, she was with the Conservation Board longer than I was. She was here when I got here, 2015. When she came aboard, well before then. She took on some more responsibilities with the island dispatch. So that's why she put in her resignation to this board. She's taking on more responsibilities there, but wish her well. She did a fantastic job. She definitely covered the island both in writing and represented well here at the Conservation Advisory Board. So Alice, thank you very much. We appreciate everything you've done.
Here's to Alice.
Cheers to you.
I sent her like a thank you card on behalf of the CAB.
Oh, perfect.
I sent Jerry a card. How many cards sent it?
And the town board's doing a proclamation thanking her as well, just so everyone knows. Yeah.
Oh, good.
And so that brings us to today, projects. And so just looking through the mailbox today and from over the summer, there's a lot of things going on. I want to just kind of clarify. I listed some projects in there because we did the scoping document for the Long Road project last time. We just basically kind of need an update with that one to see where it stands.
Okay, so that's being voted on this Monday. Took tons of feedback from the public and from many individuals, much of which ended up in the scoping document. And there's been a little bit of discussion out there as far as what the scoping document is and what it is not. So overall, when you look at it, if you were to do a complete EIS right from zero to complete, not call it a supplemental, it's really just about the only thing that doesn't have to be done again is the archaeological, because that's not going to change. Just about everything else, the traffic studies, just about every other aspect of the project has to get repeated. And you would see that in the scoping document as well. And I did get feedback from the CRED for GI, and I think they were very satisfied that what they requested, much of what they requested, the town board agreed that should belong in the document. So,
and I did see the town put up the documents, our recommendations too. Everything is
yes.
up there.
So the conservation board, the planning board, lots of public feedback, and then individual board members also had things that they felt needed to be in the scoping document. So
So right now, your vote on Monday is,
to approve it, which means then it would go to the developer and then they're responsible for executing it from there.
Who does the developer work with? I mean, there's different groups. Do they interact with each board on these items, or is there a?
So what'll happen is, they're gonna be doing all these different studies. We're gonna hire professionals in several different areas to check what they're doing and confirm using their expertise. And the developer actually pays for the folks that we end up hiring.
Mhm.
They put money in a escrow account, which will fund much of that work. But that'll be, once they get much of their work done, that's when our folks will be reviewing and confirming what has been accomplished there. And this board as well will be able to see see the output of that and comment on it. And similarly, the public and everybody that wants to comment on it will have an opportunity prior to any approvals occurring.
How much do they put in the escrow for those?
I can't remember, but it's a pretty decent amount of money. It's enough to pay for a expert in that area, in the different areas, which includes, for example, let me give you an example. One of our concerns is there's a 40-foot pond and there could be communication from the bottom of the pond to the river, and it could cause erosion. We're concerned about it. So we're going to get I think it's called a hydrogeologist, which will actually evaluate what's the risk with that and is it something we need to be worried about? Because obviously we don't want a big sinkhole under someone's house suddenly forming somewhere between this development or the pond, which is huge and deep, and the river, for example. So that's the type of, and just to kind of throw some of the thoughts out, some of the concerns was, in terms of the long-range planning committee, they envisioned and set an objective of, campus-like setting with buildings spread out with green space in between and a park-like setting type of with real, substantial buildings, but not this very large building. And they need to justify why they can't do that versus what the long-range plan envisions versus what this is, which is just one of the biggest buildings in the region, basically.
Thank you.
Is this the one we're talking about right here?
Yeah, there's only one, and it's very deep, 40-foot deep is my understanding.
That one. It's got to be that one. And it
Correct,
goes right
that
up-
is it.
It
Yep.
goes right up next to the property lines. on this
Correct.
road.
Yep.
Sam, did you have a question? I see you're unmuting there. Okay, so the next one.
So that scoping document's out online for the vote on Monday. So anyone that wants to review it can see that document right now. So it's in the agenda packet.
And just one more thing, I should know this, but how long do they have to time to respond to the, on a scoping document? How much time do
They need to
allow?
decide, are they going to go forwards with it? Because it's a significant amount of work. And, that documents, whether it's today or 2 years, if it's a new board, a different board, they may need to re-vote on it. But, it could take a couple years, could take a couple months or a couple years. It depends on how much resources they dump into, how quickly they want to convert that.
but they're not actually given a deadline.
Sorry, what was
They're
that?
not actually given a deadline?
They are not.
Okay.
No, they drive the timeline. It's their project. All we are doing is saying, if you want your project considered,
Yeah.
we need this information so we can impact assess and, whether it's, dark sky lighting, impact on migratory birds, wildlife, you name it. Impact on the character and culture of the neighborhood. Lots of things, and as well as all of Grand Island, a lot of things like that.
What is the status of the trail then in the meantime?
It looks to me like we were starting it.
Sorry, that's
I
for
think
South
I-
Point, I think you're talking about.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
So this was the Long Road Warehouse,
oh, right.
not to confuse things.
Okay.
But she's jumping ahead.
Right with you.
But we're, that's up next.
Oh,
Yep.
all right.
Yeah. And
Oh.
so.
Mike,
Yes,
I can hear you clearly, but everybody else is really very soft.
The closest to you.
so we need to talk
Okay.
in this direction.
We'll try and raise our voices.
Can you
Yeah,
hear
that's much better.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so South Point, a lot of residents are noticing a lot more clearing. They thought, oh, they cleared a ton of stuff and they thought they were done, but no, they kept clearing more and then they cleared some more. And so I know there are some concerned residents as members of the Conservation Advisory Board. We just want to make sure that we ask the right questions too. So the South Point plan is approved. Are they waiting on any more approvals or is it completely a go?
There's more approvals to go. I mean, the final plan for phase 1, 2, 3, which apparently they plan on doing them all, not necessarily concurrent, a lot of it concurrently, it sounds like, is what they're making it sound like they're considering doing.
So a lot of
So
the,
they need to submit, their plans to the planning board, get approvals, which includes landscaping and, the design of the buildings, architectural review, approvals like that.
so the clearings are in anticipation of approval and not that it's been approved, so they're clearing. They're kind of,
So the approval or the clearing is for utilities and for the different locations of the buildings and things of that nature. I don't know exactly I know what they've cleared. I don't know exactly how much of it is directly project, how much is utility, how much is, some of the roadways that are going to be, construction roadways going into the project, things of that nature. I think a lot of it is that. I don't know if they've done all the actual where the construction is going to occur for the buildings. I'm not sure because I haven't done a full assessment of exactly what's been cut.
But there's subcontractors to the owner then, or do they sell off pieces?
Yeah, so there's an entity that owns it and then they have architects and many different companies, I imagine. So the specific company is doing the clear cutting right now and clearing out and chipping and everything else. So no approvals required, no permitting required. That's one of the things we're trying to do we actually met this afternoon, if anyone is unaware, and have what is a draft that now has gone to our attorneys to finalize, and then we're going to be discussing that again on Monday. So there's a draft of the tree law that kind of took the two, and then we gained, I'm not going to say a unanimous consensus, but we need at least 3 folks to support it, and it's supported enough that we felt comfortable sending it to the attorneys at this point.
Basically, what does it say?
What's that?
What does it say, basically?
We'll go over it.
Oh, okay.
Once we go over these, I'll actually pull it up and do a quick review on it.
Might they be installing utilities?
preemptively.
Yeah,
That's,
So,
if you watch John Whitney kind of tied into the developer about that, nothing's finalized and here you've already cleared everything out and the town, generally the consensus is town board wise, we're unhappy with the approach they've taken. Their excuse is that it's, less expensive just to do everything at once. So they're campaigning and cutting everything down in anticipation of the future work that's going to be occurring there, which is still subject to change.
and it's more expensive to clear it twice if too much time
Right.
passes
Well,
between.
they're saying they're being very aggressive with the timeline, so yet to be proven. But I agree, yeah.
well, responsibly, the people of Grand Island love their forests, and to just clear it before you have all the necessary approvals is not in good taste with many of the residents of the island. And we do keep hearing that same message echoed over and over
Yes.
again. And the Conservation Board does agree with that, like we know you got property, we know you got a plan, but it's not an approved plan yet. And so make sure you have the right approvals and,
If we were
Instead
to
of with
get
decorum
this
or etiquette.
tree ordinance approved, they would require a permit, the town would have input. So that would be something, there's a lot of value. in
sounds very
accomplishing that.
familiar.
Right,
But that's for future projects.
Yeah.
correct. This one's out of the gate. This one's out of the gate. Yep.
So, all right, so any other questions about South Point? It's where the most activity is as far as.
It's, it's a lot of land when you look at it.
Unbelievable, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, like you said, Chuck, but it's more, cooperation and sharing things that didn't get done through the developer. I mean, we met with him, he could have told us stuff and still went ahead with it, but at least we would have known about it.
And that's the biggest thing. Islanders don't like to be shocked. One day there's a forest, the next day there's not.
Well, they'd started the cutting, the day they were presenting to us, they actually started the cutting, but did any of us know that they were cutting that day? And they didn't reveal it, which
At all, right.
kind of it's an omission that really disappoints me. They should have at least said, just so you know, they said, their excuse is, well, we showed you the clear cutting plan, but I see clear cutting plans for every one of the plans. I expect them to at least let us know that when they're starting, And if they've started, here we are trying to give input and say, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you save some trees? They never said, well, that might have already been cut down, So I was rather disappointed by that.
Yes, and, all right,
The town board won't be influenced by that kind of aggressive pressure by the developer.
I can't comment on that.
Okay.
so, all right. So South Point.
But unless you have something like a tree ordinance and you need to get a permit, it could happen again.
Yeah, the last
It will
time,
happen again.
Yeah, right.
I mean, what started the tree ordinance? One of the things for those that remember the Benderson
Yeah.
clear cutting over by Tops, which is sat barren ever.
Right.
Is something being built there? I don't think so. Yeah. So
And was I know this is off topic, it's on topic, but it's off topic, the parcel at the corner of Whitehaven and Baseline, where the pines have been preserved.
is that the one over by the church? By
They
the
cleared the
church?
underbrush, yeah, by the church, the nursing
Yeah, I
home.
heard they're just clearing that for whatever.
That's what it
reason.
looks like, maybe to
Cleaning it out, clearing it. Just
encourage growth of the
Right.
the healthy ones that are there.
Yeah.
Okay.
that's what.
That was
we
also
heard.
shocking.
That's what we
I'm like,
heard.
oh my goodness, what's going
I
on?
know, I know.
Well, that brush grows up quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of no development plan for that, and I don't believe there is one. That's what we're hearing. Now, the tree ordinance, if there's no development or anything happening there, will not cover that type of clearing. It's only gonna be for major developments, commercial properties,
right.
things of that
So,
nature.
I mean, and we'll talk about that later, but that's exactly what it was, right?
Right.
Like, so it wasn't necessarily a requirement of private property owners, clearing brush and stuff like that. It's for the massive clearing of large swaths of land. All right, so, let's see. So the next development, Rivertown, right? This is Rivertown.
Did it?
Yeah,
Wow.
so this is off of the town's website, right? So
Wow.
this is the Tops gas station here, right? So this would be like Pizza More, Speedway, and
Where's
then
Tops?
the haircut.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
up
this
there.
is the
Yeah,
gas
that's-
station in front of Tops
Oh,
right
okay.
there.
Oh, so it's kind of behind Speedway.
Yeah, and so this is Webb right here. And so,
Where's Marston's? Marston's is
Right
right.
down there to the right, right?
Mm.
Half of it, yeah.
On
Is
this
that-
side.
there's- that's
So there's
Marston's.
Webb.
Yeah.
Yeah, it must be right there.
yeah, that's
Wow.
Marston. So this is what is planned. You can see that there's, patio homes, apartment buildings, larger complex apartment buildings. There's even some retail space somewhere. I thought it was.
This is not approved yet, just so that everyone knows.
When they present plans like this, all these multiple mixed-use developments on Grand Island, they're gonna have thousands of people to our population. Is there any stage where it's required that they've done some kind of market study to show that there's a demand
A
for
demand,
retail
exactly.
space?
Yeah, that's not something that the
Because we have
town,
lots of empty
Right.
Mhm.
retail space. Well, that's what their lenders would
right,
require, right?
yeah, I would think.
But if
that
you're
the-
investing that money, you better be sure you got somebody
Yep.
in mind, or you went through the plan and had an
Because it
economic
just seems like
plan.
we have so much empty retail space.
Yeah.
And there's so much that's being,
So, I'd kind of like to begin the discussion of Rivertown with this whole PDD scenario and how it's becoming like the go-to thing that they ask for first. I realize it gives you some negotiating power, but it also just completely neglects the long-term zoning plans. I mean, these areas are zoned that way for a
Yep.
purpose, right? And so, in keeping with the character of the island, and this applies to the next project we're gonna talk about.
So just in terms of, just to speak on the zoning that's currently
Yeah.
here, though, just about all of this would be allowed.
Okay,
And
so why
this is
the
considered
PDD?
part of the town center. This is considered part of the town center,
Mhm, where we
which
want
is
it.
a higher density. So this is actually, according to the long range plan, this actually is a fit for what the plan says is desired in these
So if
areas.
it's a fit, then why would they be asking for a PDD?
The PDD, the mixed use, I think, is probably one of the things, but I need the attorney to better describe that. But there's definitely some reasons for it, and it does give us more.
but who
Um,
establishes?
Is it the setbacks? Because I'm looking at those buildings and they're right up against the property lines on Webb. And so
Yeah,
if the PDD is,
Setbacks aren't being changed
okay,
in that regards. So,
all right. So with the PDD, I think everything's on the table though. They can,
What are those
Yeah.
little green squares? Are those garages? What are those? On the bottom.
those are patio homes?
right.
This is the one on Webb, right?
Yes.
Is there a key here? No. But yeah, they're,
How?
well, wait a minute. So up here, they have something different than down here.
So actually, sorry, I think those are actually residential homes.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what those
this
are.
is
Yep.
different than that one. So,
Does the developer have to go to the board to get the PDD classification?
Yes.
And it's usually always given, isn't it?
Not necessarily.
So they go to the
So
town board?
this has not been approved. Even the PDD is not approved on this.
Yeah.
Nothing's approved on this at this
The
point.
developer presented.
They are
To
going to
request.
actually present to the town board on Monday.
Okay.
I will ask for them to present to this at our next meeting.
So specifically asking why they're requesting the PDD in particular.
We can bring that up on Monday night.
That's crucial, I would say.
okay, because of the current R3 district does not facilitate the creation of a true town center as supported by the comprehensive plan, the PDD's relief from inappropriate pre-regulations and rigidities to allow for an individual planned approach is wholly appropriate at this time. Don't know what that means, but,
Can you say
that
in English?
little suspicious as those words roll off the tongue, but that's what they have here in their statement of intent. The parcel size is 25 acres. The green space is at least 11.45 acres. They're going to say multifamily, 144 units on 1.2 acres, patio homes, 26 units on an acre, townhomes, 27 units on 0.8 acres, senior, 40 units on 0.4 acres, retail, 5 units on 0.2 acres, overlaps with a footprint of multifamily not included in the total, 247 units total on 3.41 acres with 350 parking spaces. And so that is the site project data.
Did you get that off the website? too?
This is, believe it or not, this was in the planning board packet that I received over the summer. I've had this a while, and right now what's before the board, I'm not sure about what's before the board right now as far as this project. I'm more sure about the other project that we're going to talk
Yeah,
about.
so for this one, they're actually presenting really for the first full time Monday night during the workshop, if you want to watch that.
Okay,
So right-
What's
I
it
believe
trying
it's right at the beginning of the workshop that they should be presenting their project and what their goal is and why they're doing what they're doing and trying to address a lot of the concerns we have about it.
That's at the workshop. meeting.
okay, this is the,
And, you know, as far as I know, I don't think any EIS has been done or anything on this at this point, or maybe they're in the process of doing it.
Sam, I know you can't see this. I'm kind of holding up the latest one that went in front of the planning board, and the latest one says 319 units. So a little bit more, and there are some subtle differences, but let's see, the blue is, those are patio homes. They're not single family homes. They are patio homes at the
Okay.
bottom.
Is that what those are? Okay.
Yeah. And it looks like there's less of them on this drawing than on that. So
Yeah,
maybe
there's
they're
things that are
multi-family.
actually changing even as we speak. So this is still in flux.
Would the patio homes theoretically be HOA?
Yeah, we do.
But yeah, I'll make sure that I ask that they present to us what their plans are as well.
That would be
And then
good.
you guys can give feedback to the town board about it.
Yeah, if we can get them on our schedule, that would be.
Is that acreage already cleared?
When I looked at it from, you know, I don't know how old any of this
I know driving down
GI
this line, there's a cleared area, but I'm not.
GIS, but like this is, I mean, this is a satellite image taken a while ago, but it looks
Also, that pond is
mostly
That's
barren.
Pretty similar to the way it is. Yeah,
And the pond is already there,
the pond is already there. Yes.
Mhm.
That's the lake,
like.
for the lakefront
The lake.
condos.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, so I don't know how old the satellite imagery is, but that's,
That's pretty close to what it is.
you know.
I was walking around it recently,
um,
looking at it from the pool, that house with the pool on the left side there.
If
right
you
in front of the pond.
if you could, you know, if it comes up when they present to you, if you could ask if they would mind if some conservation advisory board members got to walk the site.
Yep.
Before they present to us. That'll give us a reason to get outside.
Bring your hip waders. Or
How deep is that pond?
or an arc, whichever
Any idea?
is required for.
Is it man-made?
It definitely looks like it could, because you got developments on both sides, so I'm sure that was maybe a made retention pond. It kind of looks that way.
Maybe it is deep though, because I mean, you don't have vegetative growth on it, you know, around, you know, like,
So all the I'm sorry, Jim.
no, that's-
All the vegetation behind it is not gonna be touched. That's not part of the parcel, or is it? All the trees behind.
It didn't
the
show
pond?
on the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that 3 of those buildings are right here.
It's not the prop, it's not part of the property.
That pool is over here.
Um,
So that house with the pool is right here.
Yeah.
And then I know the 3 of the buildings are right
oh,
here.
yeah.
And then there's stuff over here.
But the forested area, the wooded
Actually, if you
area,
pull it back up and
is
then
that a
let's just
separate piece of
Just
property?
take it from that,
Yes, it
or
is.
get your
Yeah, because
orientation with
you-
the pond. And then pull up the development again, Jeff, and then we can kind of see relative to where the pond is. Yeah, so the trees here obviously are being cut. So there's trees in here. These look like they're not being touched.
It looks like they're
It's on
on
a different lot
a
line.
different property, but
So it's separate lot.
we should find out. It's a good section of woods.
What is Pocket Park?
little one.
Little ones in between buildings.
Yeah.
Okay.
They put, like universities do, then they put like benches in them under these, they're like little garden wings.
Yeah, so most of it's an open meadow.
Dog park, oh, public dog park, that'll be popular.
And do you have any idea if
Really?
the pocket parks, for example, are going to be the maintenance would be the responsibility?
They
of-
would own everything. yeah.
Okay,
Wow.
Yeah, the whole development, they own it, they maintain it.
mhm.
the works.
I mean, it's kind of a nice development. Well, it's got parks and a dog park and.
Is it a big dog park?
There you go.
Because the one over the information center is not much of a park, you know.
No.
I took my dog there. She loves.
A nature park with trails.
For the dog park?
No, over in the start, and there's the wetland area.
So they're
here,
talking
And
about
then it shows a nature park with.
like
trails
this
that
area
focus
here, right?
Down here. This is all nature trails.
Yeah.
And then this is wetland. We would need to walk that, yeah.
That's right behind Pete's place.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I really, like the point that Sue brought up regarding the demand for this kind of housing, I mean, especially considering it seems like, I've said this before, but the direction seems to be away from New York and not into New York. I don't know, maybe
That's what boggles my mind, but somehow like they built here in Point and filled it up right away.
They
So
did.
somehow
The
somehow
island's
there's
attracting.
people coming through and moving into these places. I don't know how it's happening, but maybe they're moving out of like Buffalo, but I don't know.
Well, but regardless, I think
Yeah.
a study on that would be very important because, I mean, I know of an example of a development that when it was going in, the developer kept on arguing for, the demand for it was so high, and yet, I mean, I live near it, and so I saw how slowly it went in.
Yeah.
I mean, it took, I think, 10 years for the first phase of it to be built out, and I'm sitting there wondering the whole time, where's the demand that they were talking about? So I think that's a very important point, because with the traffic that's going to be generated from all of these, when
Right.
we have a unique situation with the choke point of the bridges, we're not the traffic advisory board, but
But could you really?
See, I don't-
make
Are they
it
gonna-
do
I don't think that's something that the town has any, I mean, they decide what they're gonna invest in.
Yeah,
We just need to say, is it a fit? Characteristic of culturally, environmentally, overall with the long range plan, et cetera. If it's a fit, they need to worry about the investment part of it, whether they fill it up or not. So I don't think we're gonna have much say on that part of it.
but could they only build part of it and then, like you said, 10 years, they build the whole thing.
Right.
Can I build one building?
What I like about it is it's consistent with the long range plan. It's density and trying to create more of a town center, which
Right.
is, the focus of all the planning that's been occurring.
which of course is one thing if it's not just a bedroom community ultimately. But if everyone needs to be leaving the island to go to work, that's a different,
And,
You
but I
know.
mean, just looking at this one in
yeah, well,
isolation,
yeah.
which is difficult to do considering all the other ones that are on the table and the work.
And
I agree.
I mean, eventually the numbers are gonna lend themselves probably to support more businesses because we have so many people influx into the island, but at the same time, say bedroom community, people just wanna live here. Like, it seems like they're okay with bridge hopping,
Yeah.
but
But
so,
it is getting sometimes very tough to get off the island.
yeah. All right.
Especially when you've got herds of deer blocking your path.
Did you
It's
hear
also
about
hard
the
to get to
one?
the high school in the morning too. If you ever go through that craziness,
There was a deer that bust through a screen door and went and sat in the living room of somebody's house.
On Grand Island?
Yeah.
Oh, don't tell my mother that, she'll be terrified. I would like that, but.
He was coming in for dinner.
We had a deer at, I worked at Oxy on Buffalo Avenue. The deer came inside the plant, went right through a plate glass window and into the office.
Oh.
For almost,
Does it hurt?
for a couple
Oh,
of years
yeah.
in a row, we had a turkey at Thermo Fisher that would come and, we have windows right to the ground. And he would just sit there and, strutting back and forth, looking at himself.
Okay, so any other questions about Rivertown?
Related to these both Liz and Jen, what they're asking. Will each phase, there's 3 phases, have to be approved separately, I'm assuming, or are they gonna ask for approval of the whole thing now? Or
The
we don't.
PDD gets approved. One of the questions I'm gonna ask is just where are we at with the environmental impact statement? Because I have no idea on that.
Right, okay.
Which, they can't start anything until that is all, all the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed.
Right, okay.
And then, they may decide to do 1 phase, 2 phase, 3 phase, or they can decide to do the whole thing at once. That's really going to be their timeline. The thing is, what do we approve and how do we approve it? But they can ask for approval of all 3 phases at once if they intend to, do it over the next 18 months, or,
Right.
if it's, we're going to do phase 1 in the next 3 years and phase 2 in the 3 years after that. They drive the timeline.
Okay.
Would you or one of the council members mind asking them, like, I read their intent on why they need a PDD, but if the development fits, I mean, it would be valuable.
I know there's different zones there too, and I do think, so let me ask that question.
Yeah.
So
So
I
we
will
get-
ask
we
it.
get
I
a-
already got it down. I'll
get
ask
an-
all this. I'm
get
gonna
a
ask about
nice-
our access to the property.
Mhm.
I'm gonna ask the status of the EIS. I'm gonna ask, why, a PDD versus what it's currently zoned for, things of that nature. So we'll hear what they have to say Monday night.
What do you get under a PDD anyways? I don't know that much about PDD, so what are they asking for?
So
What's the advantage?
So like at South Point, it's a mixed use where there's residential homes, there's apartment buildings, there's some commercial property. So it's a mixed use so that you can do different things. They have more flexibility, but we have more say over what they can and can't do.
So would the patio homes, for example, that are proposed or look to be proposed there, would those be permitted under the current zoning?
I would have to, I'm not sure on that.
Okay, because I'm just thinking,
I'm pretty sure just about everything can be done, but.
well,
But
if it can't be, if that variety is not permitted and the patio homes are part of that variety, it really increases the density of the development, and it's not consistent with the abutting the existing homes, and I think that's a large factor.
So those homes on Webb Road are well taken care of. They're nice homes. They're really nice homes. Like I was just driving down there the other day, and I didn't realize that the property line was so short in the back.
I'll try and get answers to that Monday night. So I'll ask those types of questions about the patio homes zoning wise.
So I know, maybe having a buffer between those two things, if you're gonna have that mixed use, that gigantic difference, that might be something that would, satisfy the current residents on Webb.
Yeah.
Mike,
Yes.
I think somebody, I don't know who said, everything that's been done fits into the high density zoning for that area.
That's
So-
actually my understanding, but I don't want to say something that's incorrect. So let me confirm all that Monday night. But my understanding is it is high density. That's the desire. That's what's in the long range plan, and that's a zoning for that area.
Mike, I have a fairly good idea of what's in the long range plan, and that's what's in the long range plan.
Right.
So I think we should, there are a lot of things we would like to see, but a lot of the conversation is talking about what we would like to see as opposed to what the zoning allows, and we
Right.
can't change what the zoning allows.
Yeah.
So just to
That's just, I think we should keep that in
Just so
mind.
that people understand, just to kind of add some depth to what Sam said, we can't necessarily say, we can't just say, no, you can't do that. If it's zoned for it,
Correct.
and if we say no, it's what's legally referred to as a taking. And once that lawsuit starts, you can't say, well, we've changed our mind. Yes, you can go ahead and do it. You've taken, and whatever the the loss of revenue is associated with that, the town could be liable for that. And that's actually what, if anyone's heard of the Clay lawsuit, that's what happened with the Clay lawsuit over at, right by Lighthouse Point, over by the marina, over by the hotel on East River Road. Is we got nailed for a taking, millions of dollars in the lawsuit, years of paying back by the town. So I mean, it can really have a big impact on the town if you take the wrong approach and say, do something that you're not legally able to do, denying.
But you
certain
still
development.
have, the town board is still within its rights to deny the PDD.
Yes,
Is
we do
okay,
not have to
so-
approve a PDD.
So if you determine the answers to some of these questions and they're not tending toward the approval of a PDD, then that's
Right.
totally legitimate.
So
and
yes.
totally okay.
If we say no to the PDD, they can still submit
Yeah.
probably just about most of this. It
Mhm.
just will be more difficult for them and more difficult for the planning board and everybody else, is my understanding.
So I do think Sam brings up an interesting point on like about the conversation and what we would like to see. And you have this area here that's in between commercial and residential. And, I guess from a design perspective, it would be nice if it fit with that residential part. You know what I mean? Like it blended with the neighbors that live there 24/7 versus, businesses that are open, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Like that, you just gotta kind of consider that a little bit, I think, when you're have a spot like this. It's absolutely going to be developed. I mean, you look at it now, a tree ordinance wouldn't apply there anyway because it's zoned that way, but there's no trees on that lot. So, it is definitely open green space. I see that the last design that they put a trail on, which I mean, was definitely something that the community supports, is building those trails and, the little parks, the dog park, stuff that's inviting. I'm just kind of curious to get those first few questions answered before we start thinking about, what we would like to see.
Right.
You get
So
the questions out of the
hopefully I'll
gate.
get well, I will definitely ask those other questions you just asked me to ask. I will cover that on Monday night.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And so we're going to shift gears. And Mike and I were talking about this before the meeting. There's not really a name, and you'll hear the term Lighthouse Point thrown around because of.
I'm pretty sure there's a new name for it, but I
Yeah.
haven't heard officially what it is. And I asked John and he didn't provide it. He hasn't texted me back, and regrettably I left my phone at home.
All right. So
So he may have responded, but
well, I mean, this lot, I mean, is very familiar because since I've been on the board, there's been 2 proposals, and this will be the 3rd proposal, I think. If you remember, the first one was that high-rise apartment building, and that didn't happen. And then there was the one before this, and this one's kind of a modified version of the last one that we saw.
a little bit less dense is my understanding.
Yeah.
But nothing's official even on that one yet.
So I have.
It's a concept plan. That's what that is right now.
Right now, I think coming in front of the town board is another rezone, because if you look at, and I can't use my laser pointer on that, but I will on another map. The area that's here towards the Radisson, this lot right here is actually zone B1. Okay, all the rest over here is R2.
And that's another reason to do, the PDD is, it puts it all under the same zoning category, basically, which improves the flexibility of
What is
what can be
B1?
done.
Is that
It's
Hamlin?
business. It's a business.
That is a
district,
Hamlin
and
location.
because it's adjacent to the Radisson, this is a business district. And so it'd be interesting to get the Radisson's take on this, because I'm sure that they would love it if like a restaurant or a shop opened up that was near them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it's zoned for versus residential. But it would just be, I would be interested on, hearing from, since it is an employer on the island, hearing what they have to say about it. But that's what's in front of the town board now. There are plans, and I had to go back, and they came in front of the planning board over the summer. I had to just take a
And
picture.
that was a concept plan, right? Is that what they referred to it as?
So, this is what it was. So I'm looking, I have this, so this is the layout. Zoning, with this layout plan. This is the latest one that I have seen. So this area here is B1, and that's what they're trying to get rezoned. And they must, if they're gonna rezone it to R2, they're
Oh,
gonna,
that's what I was gonna ask.
yeah, they're
To
gonna
what?
go from B1 to R2. And that'll match
So
the,
it matches everything else.
yeah, that'll match everything else. And I don't know, would they even ask for PD at that point if it's all R2?
I think,
Why would they do a zoning change if they weren't asking
It's
for
just residential,
PDD?
right? It's not a mixed use.
I would suspect they're doing a PDD, but I haven't heard anything
Yeah.
official on
Is
that.
it a
I'm not
mixed
sure.
use or is it just residential?
It's just
they're proposing.
residential. These are all,
From our meeting?
Those are the 4-unit, patio or
yeah,
townhouse.
I mean, this is,
But you, Sue, wouldn't they need it because part of it's already zoned as business?
Okay, so to make it all the same,
Yeah.
as opposed to seeking different zoning for them.
Yeah,
oh,
I'm not sure.
oh, they even have phases on here.
How big are those lots?
I can't, so I can't, but, yeah, I don't know. That, I can't really read that scale.
So once I hear this one rumbling, we'll maybe in January or so, we'll ask them to present to
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if they're thinking something that would tie it into the existing neighborhood, large houses on relatively large lots or something completely different.
Yeah, so, I mean, the neighbors, I think even spoke up already.
Yeah, they're pretty vocal.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's interesting that it's a B1 on that side. I didn't know that, but like,
Yeah.
it makes sense that you see the Radisson across the street, that it would be zoned.
And the golf club is on the other side.
Right.
So that's the only corner that's, and then the marina.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the only corner that's not developed.
And we'll have to take a look. I don't know if it's on this lot, but somewhere, I don't know if it's over here or over here. There is an EED somewhere
Ooh.
on that stretch of land.
That's good to know.
But I don't know if it's on the lot. I can't remember if it's over here or if it's in here. I mean, we'll have
Well,
to,
in theory, they can't build on it, right?
without,
Jeff, I thought it was on the east side. Of course, you can't see I think it's on the east side, much closer to River Road.
much,
East River.
much
Isn't it?
closer to where?
River Oaks.
Okay, so you're saying it's down that way a bit?
Maybe I'm
Which it
not
could
reading,
be.
I may not be reading the map right, but I thought East River is on the opposite of where you just showed.
Okay,
It's on the other side.
other side of the road, like up here?
No, on the
Way
same side of the road, but
Over here?
yeah, over there
Yeah.
where we just marked now, yeah.
Okay,
But that's right. that
Towards the
right
Radisson, towards Whitehaven.
Yeah, towards the
This
Radisson.
is- that's river, that's Whitehaven.
Exactly, you've got, yeah, that's what.
This
it
is all open here, so,
It's funny
Yeah.
that that's PDD because it's pretty barren there. It's
well,
like open fields and brush. Huh.
They wanted to make a launch there, didn't they, for canoes or something for a while?
Yeah, that was proposed. I don't know if it's the same spot you're talking about.
That's,
It was across.
yeah, that's
On the
across
other
the
side.
road.
Area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People do sometimes launch there, but it's not ideal. It's rather hazardous,
Okay.
right?
And we, the long range planning committee talked about, that's a place where they want a launch to go in the future. Because there aren't any on the East River.
Right.
right. All right, well, I guess keep us informed of what's going on here. We can look back at the satellite map just to kind of see
Find
that.
out about the EED before it progresses too far.
Yeah, well, I mean, with an EED, that has to come, that we have to comment on that before
Right.
they do anything. And more than likely, of course, we always ask if we can walk it because we don't really know what's there unless we see it in front of us. But yeah, I don't know what this is, just an access road on this business part or.
When you drive down there, there's like chains hanging and,
Right.
at some
That's
point,
just that roadway there.
yeah.
There's not much there,
Mailbox.
right? There's just, that was what they play with.
Mhm.
They took it
I
out,
think
so
it
it
is,
went down to almost to the surface of the clay, so
So
hardly
You know,
anything's gonna grow there.
Do you know if the property is owned all the way up to the trees that are there now?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the footprint is.
Uh,
Looking at that
oh
map, it
my
looks like a lot of those trees get cut, right?
yeah, this whole, this area here
Right,
is all forested.
Yep.
Actually, there's a forest here too.
Yeah, yeah.
right.
You need to save more, of course.
Cut, cut, cut. So you can see where that is.
Any idea,
Yeah, they
if
could
any
tree
of the
ordinance
shipping and
on it.
logistics bottleneck that's going on now is impacting any developers as we speak in terms of getting materials and?
Yeah, well, it definitely drove up prices, we know that for sure.
Sounds
But
like it's-
it seems like they're going like gangbusters. I mean, I don't see any slowdown, I see an acceleration, so it's just
Well, the price of 2x4s came back down,
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
that's-
in plywood and everything, yeah.
but that doesn't necessarily mean the cost of a home went down.
No.
No, they haven't.
Right, or any of the other things that are involved in.
All right, so there is one other thing that I did not have on my list. Any other comments about this right now? I think we need to know more information. But in front of the planning board, 1815 Love Road. So I'm gonna go, hopefully I know my island geography enough to find Love Road. Where is it? Here.
Dixon Staley.
All right, so and this is Love, right?
That's love right there, yeah.
All right, so is this Glen Avon then?
Yes.
Okay, so I know you can't see it, but this is what's proposed.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, is it right next to the gas station?
Yeah.
Is
so-
it
back of
behind
it,
those
right?
buildings right there? Is that where that's
Wait,
going?
wait, wait. They cleared it.
Behind,
Where they had that lab over there?
The lot that was cleared right next to the gas station? Yes.
Mhm.
something's going
And then
on.
re-cleared, and then re-cleared.
It's not very big.
Yeah, so let's see here. The proposed site plan modification adds 30 residential apartments to the site that will be located in a new second and third floor that will be added to the building. Okay, so I guess it's mixed use. The bottom is going to be commercial, the top is going to be apartments. The approved site plan included 53 striped spaces and 57 banked spaces. The proposed site plan increases these amounts to 156 and 60 respectively.
What is this called?
Remainder of the site plan remains unchanged from the previously approved plan. We'll just call it 1815 Love Road.
Can you circle the building on there that, I think I know which one you're talking
Is it
about,
the
but on the
white one in the
screen?
back?
The lot that's cleared is right here.
Yeah,
Right, yeah, next to the gas station.
So I don't have a laser pointer on this app, so I can't
Oh,
do
okay.
that from this app. But yeah, it looks like it's along the edge there. No, here's Glen Avon. Where's the,
I thought that was part of.
So that's
South
love,
Lawn.
left to right at the
Is it this
bottom.
building?
Yeah,
Glen
that
Avon.
there, that's what I.
Yeah,
think
it's
it is.
all
Yeah.
on the left side, because
That's
that's
the old
Glen,
Mesmers.
that's Glen Avon on the right side of the,
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
all the old.
so it's all
Mesmers.
to the left. And that's love, what's right up to the
Mesmers.
corner of
I
Love
remember,
Road, so it almost looks like a lot of that goes away.
so it's gonna be, there's existing buildings there, right?
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Mm.
And you know
So-
what, they do show up on your map. there.
So it's gonna be like, it's gonna, like right here, and the parking is gonna be out back.
Is the gas station gonna be gone?
I think it's built around all that.
Oh.
Am I wrong?
I'm taking it as, this is it. Unless I'm reading this drawing
I'm
wrong.
starting to.
That's how I'm reading it.
Where is Glen Avon? in that?
Here's Glen Avon.
So the gas station's right about
Right.
here.
Oh,
Yeah, no.
okay.
So it's
That's
going
what I'm
in the
saying,
cor-
it's
it's
getting to the
nestled
end
in the
anyway,
corner.
where are you gonna put anything else?
And I
You can't really- Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what happens to those buildings, because do you see those on the drawing there? Sue?
No, no.
Are they repurposed? Yeah. Is- Are
Does it
they
show the
scheduled
gas
for
station?
demolition?
Is it still there?
Warehouse space, warehouse space.
Are any of those buildings occupied?
They don't really show a
know.
gas
Ah, there are
station.
cars that park there occasionally, because I go by there all the time.
Patio.
So
canopy.
something's going on in
Restaurant
some of the
addition.
buildings, but I don't know what it is. Maybe they're growing marijuana.
The
It's
one
incredible the
behind the
amount of
gas.
I wonder if
development
this is the gas station here.
Oh,
So that's on
Yeah,
for
they
this
ran
coming.
samples and.
Uh,
stuff.
Maybe this is
I
the
actually
gas
sent some
station?
stuff there at
This?
one time.
Let's
So
see,
the
this
highway
is
business?
Love.
Or maybe this is the gas station.
Yeah, that looks like, that's about the right
So
spot
it's kind
for
of
it.
all around the gas station and then
That's what it
parking will
looks
go on
like.
the lot.
So
that's
this is
right there.
stamped August
The
28th.
Parking's here, huh?
It's 3 stories.
So yeah, they say they will add a second and third story.
Let me just read that.
On the
To the
existing
existing
building.
structure.
Wow.
It's ugly.
Yeah, so that's the
Looks
gas
like
station,
it's
like you
the
said.
one-
Yeah.
That is the gas station, I think.
Yeah.
That must not be to scale, because I mean, that's a pretty big,
Well, the
maybe
gas
that's just
station
the
has a
parking
lot.
lot. Yeah, that must be the parking lot.
So the
Yeah.
previously approved site plan included retail, restaurant, and commercial uses only, but they're
So
trying to
that's
get
that
residential
building you
above
see
it.
there.
So much, that, and that's not even South Point in the development we already talked about,
That's right next
with all
door.
this additional
Yes.
retail.
It is nice.
Ay, ay, ay.
It's nice looking.
How many more bodies?
No one had
Oh,
much, they had
We're gonna need
Uh-huh.
another bridge.
Right,
And
right,
a couple more schools to boot.
right.
Yeah, I think.
The sewer system?
Yeah, we gotta get
Right.
an
We're
gonna do the
estimate of the
Lancaster,
population
Western
increase. I'm
York.
sure we're looking at maybe anywhere with all these developments.
They said an
I mean,
increase
if-
of about
Probably 4 to
5,500 people.
Grand.
It's 5,500 was said about.
5,500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess the bridges don't scare
And we're,
anybody
and
anymore.
right
It
now, we're
used
up
to
to
be, I don't wanna
22. We were
live,
at 18.
you know, in a place where we gotta have bridges.
They want to get our island discount on the toll.
Oh, is that what it is?
There you go. It's a good one.
All right, so, okay, so
So where does that? Somebody mentioned it's approved already,
So the
the concept
the
is?
commercial plan was approved. They're looking to
commercial.
add to that, which I assume means another, it needs to be approved again.
Everything needs to be.
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, it's not like you keep that and change it and it's already approved. It's, you gotta get it approved.
Maybe we should take that open space plan and put everything down there that's, we're gonna, or there's gonna be built and see what, if there's
Yeah.
anything left.
Yeah.
You know,
We're filling up fast.
Well, one of the top properties was South Point,
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
highest rated, yeah.
That's quality, right?
All right.
The trees are down, so it changes that.
So what else you got there on your fun agenda tonight,
Well,
Jeff?
we're gonna leave the projects here, but if we can get, what, we don't want to have a meeting where we got multiple developers coming in. We'll
No.
try to keep them spread out
Yep,
if
so we'll do
possible.
that. And then it sounds like, depending on what's going on with the Lighthouse Point,
Okay,
probably try and get them in January.
okay.
Was there a lighthouse there?
I was just gonna ask that, but then they changed the name, right? So
Right.
Yeah, I'm-
it would make no sense
I
if.
think that I
I
had
don't
heard
think
that,
there's a Jamestown River, or what's the name of this other development? James River? Or-
Rivertown?
Rivertown.
There's no river, right?
there's no river in Rivertown, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a while ago, there was some discussion about a development on Alt Boulevard between Love and Fix. And there are two entrance points that have, there's been a lot of activity. I drive down that road, a number of times every day. And there's been a number of cars there. Has anything been submitted regarding that?
There's so many things going on. I
Yeah.
haven't heard of anything at all.
Okay. I wouldn't be surprised because it's just, there's nothing there.
Right.
But there's cars there every day.
They cut some brush on what, Whitehaven and Alter, right, on the corner there. Where that house is, it looks still
Oh,
agitated.
Yeah, if you're talking by
yeah.
the storage buildings, I think they may be extended.
No, where the old
No,
farm was, where the
no.
solar farm was gonna go.
Right.
They cut, they brush and stuff right
I think
down.
they're knocking a house down.
That old house?
Yeah.
That's where the solar farms.
Yeah,
going.
that's where the solar
Right.
farm's going.
So the
No,
solar
okay,
farms.
the
plan
solar
there.
farms,
Mhm.
The front of that, Pinto is subdividing into 3 residential units.
I've heard something about that, yeah.
And then 2 of the solar farms are applying for a special use permit to put goats.
Yes. And just so you're clear,
the
the
solar-
Bedell Road has, if you look at the Bedell Road, you would think that's all just one solar farm. Those are two back to back. The one is access from Industrial Drive, the other one from by the 190 there on
Okay.
Bedell.
All right.
So it's because there was a creek in between, so it's actually two different separate, it's considered solar park 2 and 3 or something like that. I can't remember the designation, but
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's 2 and 3 there.
All right.
So what about the two new ones? Are we gonna discuss those two?
The what? The solar?
The Emery and the other one? Or,
I looked through.
oh no, it's at the planning board.
Those
Yeah,
might be coming up soon
Yeah.
because of
Have
the
any of those
moratorium.
yet.
So the moratorium goes off. So the 18th, so 45 days from the 18th, so figure mid-December
Oh,
is
okay.
about the
Yeah.
time you'll start hearing.
I think I saw. it
If
on
they
the planning
continue
board
with the
agenda.
solar farms, we'll start hearing rumblings right after mid-December.
So you're saying that the other two existing farms are requesting votes right now? Permit?
Two of them
fees?
are, yeah.
Okay.
And that's the one you can see from Bedell Road in the 190.
Mhm.
There's actually two farms, two
Yes.
solar farms there
Yes.
that did have goats. They were,
Yes.
or sorry,
Sheep.
sheep.
I did.
Did have goats too, I heard. And then they've been removed, but they're possibly gonna come back. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
So as long as that's humane and properly cared for.
Which I was listening to this interesting story on NPR about the use of goats in areas of California where they've, just been devastated by fires. And so they go in and they eat the underbrush and then they poop.
Mhm.
And their excrement, it
Like the
creates
seeds.
a very good environment for plants to take hold. So it's really kind of interesting.
My
It's a
kids,
little
the,
side.
the little goat farms that would pop up every now and then, the school buses would stop and my kids would know all the names of the goats.
Aw.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's keep moving. Diane, you sent out an email about a few things about the tree inventory plan, planting, and a couple of us working on that possibly, and
Oh, the
Yeah.
subcommittee.
Right now, the inventory isn't done yet. I just called Dick today to find out, because I said we need an update on what's going on. And we've been asked to form these smaller committees. I think I asked Dick to find out what are we actually supposed to do. I think the idea is we work on these separate parts of the management plan. So, which would require different expertise from different people. So, that's why I put out just a request. Does anyone want to work on the invasives? And 2 people responded here on our board. The
tree planting.
planting, a couple of people volunteered also, and even somebody from, I asked the farm group if maybe they could have somebody. So again, depending on when these meetings actually happen, what was the third one?
Natural disasters or something, emergency?
Yeah, emergency preparedness, and we decided that that Dick and Lynn and the engineering department should be the ones to look at that. We're supposed to get instructions from Lori Broadbent, who's in charge of this project. I think she's been kind of swamped, and we're still waiting for some instructions from her.
We have time. We got lots of
we
time.
have time, and it would be nice if, more of us could be involved in some of those committees, or maybe not.
Sam, can you hear us okay? I won't ask.
I see I'm muted, so you couldn't hear me. I said I could.
No, that's
hear you.
okay. Can you hear Diane speaking okay? I'm just making sure because we do want to
Yes.
capture everything on. So you're
Yes,
kind of our outside observer, making sure everyone can hear what's being said.
Yep, I can hear her clearly.
So anyway, I'm glad a few people volunteered, and as things progress, I can tell you more. And it
So it's
prob-
still in the startup phase.
Yeah, it
Right,
is,
got
yeah.
it.
But I do think the whole conservation board should have input into the management plan, whatever it happens to be. So I'm sure these committees will bring that all back to us.
Sounds good.
That's my hope anyway.
How far from like that road did they go with it? This is a tree thing along the roads, right? How far, like, did they look at? And,
They looked at only in the right of ways,
only in the right of
and
ways?
they were given very
Only
specific.
town-owned properties. and-
And town-owned
Oh,
property.
okay.
Like Dick said, they just finished doing the linear bike path inventory. now.
Is there much acreage when you add it all up, or?
Until we get all the
Just you don't know,
statistics,
right?
we will get a very final detailed report. Where each tree is and what its condition is and what's recommended for it. So I'm sorry, I don't have any more to say, but
No.
it's coming along,
More to come.
yeah.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
All right, solar law updates. So, we worked on that.
You know, I'm sorry, I should say one more thing. Oh, but that's the long range.
You're on there too.
Oh, okay, I'll wait then. I'll wait for that.
There was no, I obviously didn't take
Doesn't
anything
matter,
like
yeah.
in consideration when I did up the agenda, but, solar law.
So
where does
solar
it stand?
law, it's, the moratorium has actually been extended for 45 days after the 18th, which was the last time it was supposed to expire.
Mhm.
And that's just the wait period before it goes into effect, and it goes out on the books. It goes out on what's called E360 and
Mhm.
officially becomes law. And at that point, the moratorium expires
Mhm.
automatically and the law goes into effect. And I do think that we ended up with a very good law.
I didn't see the vote pass. Was it 5-0?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
And that's a good example where there was a lot of heated debate. But I do think that at the end, we ended up with a very good end product. When you look at that law, I think it's going to be a gold standard for many communities that want to have that right balance between the community interests as well as the interests of solar farms and property owners and everything else. I think there's the right balance there.
So
And it's a far improvement over what we had, which was not,
Right.
it was not favorable to the community whatsoever.
Can is it in such a form that you can email it to all of us?
Yes, I
to
can.
see?
Yep.
Okay. And the other question is, what did you say about when it would go into effect?
So
45 days from the-
45 days from the 18th of October.
Will go into-
And if I remember correctly, that's somewhere is right around mid-December or something like that. Or beginning of December, could be the beginning of December.
Okay, great, wow.
Now some of the plans from the solar law, now that that's passed, I mean, there is a grace period, but like it can still roll in front of the planning board in that time frame because that's just an advisory.
The planning board will use that as a roadmap for any approvals going forwards.
Okay,
So there was no grandfathering or anything. So this law applies to all in-process projects.
okay.
Well, thanks to all the people that
Yeah.
helped it along and you too, Mike, for
Good.
spearheading it.
I think that, if something doesn't work great for our community, it's good to put the brakes on and
Yep.
redo it if we have to.
Yeah, North Tonawanda just mentioned a moratorium on solar.
Oh, yeah?
All right, and that brings us back to you, Diane, long-range planning.
Okay. Well, I resigned from it. Because
Oh,
I've been on it for quite a while and I just want to free up another Thursday night.
Do we have a CAB person on it then?
Not right now.
Mm.
I talked to Jim, or I emailed Jim today and said, do you want me to just ask for a volunteer or do you want to actually select somebody? He said, well, let me talk to John Whitney about it and then he's going to talk to you. So we need somebody on it. How they want to proceed with it, I'm not sure.
It sounds like there's a new, I can't remember what the name of it, a new committee. That one's being dissolved and a new committee's,
Well, it's not exactly being dissolved. They want to name it differently,
right,
but a lot of the same people
right. I would
are
assume.
on
Yep.
it. They want
But
it
they're
to
shifting
be,
more towards not developing the plan, but executing the plan. You're right.
exactly. And they want to just try to maintain the plan and monitor it. So it doesn't get lost,
Right.
So they just want a different name. So it's more of a
I
permanent.
don't think there's a
Committee.
hearing on that on Monday, is there?
it's been a pleasure. I have to say, it's really opened my eyes to what's more things going on around the island. Gotten to know more people, and I feel like it's actually been a privilege to work on it. And they're still doing they're finishing up the LWRP too. So that's, once that's completed, then they'll be, well, they're still monitoring what the boards are doing and offering help if we need help, so I found it very interesting, and so hopefully we'll find out from Jeff maybe next time how they want to handle somebody taking my spot.
Well, thank you so much for doing.
Yeah,
this
you know,
time. I
it's-
mean, it's been a critical time when we,
Mhm.
revisited that whole long range plan and got it edited to the document that exists now. So that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I was going to say this to the news, but I mean, you achieved Citizen of the Year on Grand Island, as an environmental steward. So, and that was definitely well deserved. And I was there. It was a very nice ceremony. It was a very nice thing.
Very
So,
honored.
congratulations. All right. So, I do have the town board report, but I got a lot of news announcements and comments. So maybe I'm going to flip those if you don't mind.
Feel free, Jeff.
Okay.
You're the chairman today.
So, Mike, so everybody's heard rumblings about the tree ordinance, right? So every time forests come down on Grand Island, the tree ordinance comes up again, and we know the community supports the tree ordinance. And 2 years ago in December, we had a nice one, and it was palatable, I think, between the businesses and the people of Grand Island. But it just got slung back down to committee, and so it never got to a vote. And so, we fully expect that when it does get to a vote, it's going to pass. I mean, who's going to say no to protecting the natural resources of the island? The question is now, like, what kind of tree ordinance are we looking at here? Obviously, that private property thing is back. And so, if they want to be aware of, let me stop the share here. I'll stop sharing my screen of these trees being taken down. There you go. How are you going to go about that? Because you can't just fully remove the private property piece. So I'm just kind of curious as to what the.
Okay, so we mentioned the tree law that we developed a few months ago, 2019 is when it kind of died in committee. So today we met again. This will be our second 2.5 hour meeting with the town board, where we sat down and looked at. We started with, there was actually, if everybody remembers, there was version A and version B. Version A was the Conservation Advisory Board, where there was compromises made. Originally, it had 1 acre and greater. So that got removed. So all private property got removed, with the exception of where there's a housing development or subdivisions, et cetera. So any major commercial development would be covered by it, but small property owners or property owners in general, where there's no development plan, would not be included in the law. So that's where we ended up in 2019. I'm going to show you this, and when you look at it, what we ended up with at that time was a permit, but there wasn't a lot of teeth to it. There wasn't much consequence for, if you did go in and clear cut. There was no look back. There was a lot of things. So if you watch our board meeting, I think it was right around the last week of September or so. It was on a Thursday. We met a couple hours and compared those two, and took from the version B, that was version B, which was all the other advisory boards, developed a law that really only applied to town property and town trees only. Which, do we really need a tree ordinance for something we already 100% control? So that was really symbolism over substance. That law, it really had no substance to it whatsoever. Our law that this committee put together and did try to push through, or whatever you want to, whatever term you want to give it. I do think had substance. It would have at least called a timeout. There would have been a discussion about mitigation. There was a permitting requirement and a review process. But now when you look at what we've, so today when we met, and you'll see in both meetings, it starts out with a lot of, back and forth and a lot of debating, and you're sitting there thinking, man, those guys are really going at it. But it's part of gaining some alignment a little bit. You might say, debate is healthy. So we shouldn't view debate as unhealthy. Right. So then if you watch what developed, then we then, after we kind of rolled up our sleeves, duked it out a little bit, we then dove into the law. And I think we had some very constructive outputs from what we accomplished today. And I'll kind of go through what we accomplished today. So this is just the purpose, which I think this is actually better than what we had before. We've actually added some additional information to the purpose, but I'm not going to go through it all because in the interest of time tonight. So I'm going to just zip to the part where the teeth of this thing is. So definitions, obviously, town tree advisory board. So that's the creation of an advisory board that's going to be consulting or advising the town board. Protection and planting of trees, species and locations of trees, injury of trees. So this is all, for the most part, much of this was in the law that the CAB came through with.
This part's very familiar.
Most of this was not changed at all from 2019. Removal of trees. Hold on one second.
I did listen to the workshop, and there was one comment that I thought was interesting. The question was asked, did we conduct any research? Did we look at any other communities? Ordinances?
Round and round and round. We went through it a lot. Yeah. For 20 years.
Yeah.
How many years?
20 years.
Was it 20 years?
So
So Ed, you were one of the originals, right?
At
And it's
least
really
20
been
years.
20 years. And Sam can attest to that as well. He was involved, Ed was involved. Bob Wynn was involved, right? Was he back then?
I think so.
Yeah.
Language matters, and I think referring to it as a tree protection plan doesn't grate on people as much as a tree ordinance. Because tree protection is what you're hoping to achieve. Yeah.
Right.
It struck me when I saw that term.
So that might be something to
Yeah,
I
consider.
think there's something to consider. I think tree protection it's not so threatening, right?
Yeah, I guess
It's like
It's-
instead of hunting prohibited, permission is required.
yeah, ordinance may be a more appropriate word because no one should think that this stops
How about
Clear
tree protection
cutting.
ordinance?
because what this really does is when there is a clear cutting, so that's one thing people got to understand is this does not stop clear cutting from occurring. What it does is when that does occur, requires a permit, requires a discussion and we'll go through it. So let me just go through the law and you'll get the gist of it. So it's how are we going to mitigate if it's determined that it's really necessary? Because first of all, we challenge, is it absolutely necessary to do the clear cutting? And then if it is absolutely necessary, how can we mitigate the harm to the environment as a result of what's occurring? And you'll see in this law. So some of this actually is stronger than what the prior law had from 2019 when you compare it. So mitigation measures where a tree removal permit is required as part of site plan or subdivision application, the following information must be provided. For site plan or subdivision, the applicant must show how the maximum number of trees can be preserved on the subject property, taking into consideration the layout, driveway locations, building locations, etc. If appropriate, trees cannot be preserved, the planning board will require the install of 2 new trees per building site at a location prescribed by town trees, by the town. Trees are for replanting shall be selected from a town of Grand Island species list and a minimum of 2.5 inches in caliper or as specified. And just as a point, most of the developments that go up right now don't have a tree on the plant, on the plot. So Usually it's the residents and then end up, so at least we're requiring, if you're gonna clear cut and put a new building up, you're gonna have to have some trees for those.
Only two.
Remember?
I know, it's not a lot. It's not a lot.
The way I read that, the 200+ acre long road warehouse.
Right.
We only get 2 trees.
Well, let's continue. Well, we didn't even have 2 trees. So that's actually
Listen,
that's an
no.
improvement.
2 trees is in the landscaping plan. That's on the
Yes, it is.
books.
That's
That
true, too.
is-
They
that
don't
is the
enforce it.
Failure of people to enforce the law.
They don't enforce that. So that's in
It's
this,
already
and we
there.
expect it
It's
to be
already there.
enforced.
Yeah.
So now note, as part of site plan approval, a 5-year look back, which this wasn't in there earlier today, so now it's in there. So we're saying a 5-year look back related to clear cutting of greater than 1 acre will be included as part of approval, and we'll talk about the consequence down lower. Standard,
You were getting prepared.
so if someone goes and clear cuts and 2 years later, right? So we look back 5 years, if you did a clear cutting, okay, we need to discuss this as part of site plan approval. Okay, so, and the teeth of that's up ahead here. So standards for permit review may include all factors the town considers relevant, including the following: the extent to which use of property requires cutting down, killing, or destroying trees, any hardship of the applicant that will result from a modification or denial of the requested permit, the desirability of preserving any tree by reasons of its size, age, or some other outstanding quality. Get the extent to which the area would be subject to increased water runoff, the heightened desirability of preserving tree cover in densely developed or densely populated areas, the need for visual screening in transitional zones or relief from glare or other negative visual impacts, and the end's just a hanger, so that ends there.
But there's an inventory that is required of what trees are there.
So let's just keep going. And yeah,
Okay.
so the tree advisory board, so let me make sure. So the tree advisory board must provide advisement to the town board within 30 days of receipt. So that's going to be a pretty quick turnaround time. That means it's not going to be waiting until a scheduled meeting. We receive a permit, we almost have to meet within the next 5 to 10 days, which will give us 20 days to do research and get back to advising the town board on what our thoughts are about the permit. Tree removal permits shall be acted on by the town board upon review of recommendation and advisement by the tree advisory board. If the tree removal permit application is not acted upon by the town board within 60 days, and after receipt by the town, it shall be deemed approved unless agreed upon by the applicant to extend that time.
Didn't we hit it in the one?
I think so.
Yeah, that was in there, yeah. So not all of this is news. I'm just highlighting the important parts. So enforcement of this chapter shall be the responsibility of code enforcement officer. Violation of any of the provisions of this chapter shall be punishable by a fine of not more than $250. So that started a conversation, if you watched today's meeting, is $250. Hell, they'll just go out, they'll cut everything down and pay $250 and say, okay, no big deal, we'll give you $500. Each day's continuance of violation after notice shall be deemed a separate and distinct violation and shall be punishable accordingly. So now we're going to have legal ad wording related to violation. A penalty should be enforced. It was suggested a 4-to-1 replanting as an example for each acre removed. That would be if they went and clear cut and then 2 years later submitted their site plan, thinking that they were circumventing the permitting process.
So is that 4 trees per acre?
No,
Is that
4 trees for every one removed,
Really?
right?
Oh, wow.
So, but there's wording that's going to be in development. Legal has to give us feedback on that.
That's not stated correctly there then.
4 to 1.
For each acre removed, you mean for each tree removed?
See, that's why I took it as, okay, so are you gonna plant 4 trees per every 1 acre that was removed?
Yeah, that makes
That's
sense,
kind-
right?
Yeah, that's kind of how I took it.
I think we were saying 4 acres for every 1 acre, because what we're trying to do is say the pain threshold, if I go and clear an acre for a site plan or whatever, that without the proper permit, I gotta I'm gonna be punished by having to figure out how to plant 4 acres more of trees. So that's really what the intent of that is.
Can I ask about,
Now, will that survive? I don't know, but that's what the town board, and there was at least 3 people that were saying, let's put that in there, and
How about if you write that 4-to-1 replanting of trees removed? So that for every tree that's cut down, they have to plant 4 instead of using acres.
But I think he's saying that it's acres, not trees.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah,
that's what I
right,
was
for
gonna
every
ask.
acreage you're gonna develop, you gotta have 4 of trees, right?
Mitigation
Is that
ratio.
agree?
You ruin an acre of wetland, you have to replace it with 3 acres. But the same thing for other things.
oh, legal's looking at the wording on this, so
Yeah, Mike? What I'm,
Yes.
what I'm.
don't worry about the wording, because legal's gonna reword the whole thing there, so.
It's not the wording I'm thinking about, but where are you gonna get the 4 acres?
That's something we gotta figure out. So this could be a fee.
Or it could be somewhere else.
But if you just say 4 trees for every tree removed,
Right. So we're gonna let legal figure that all out.
But you'd hope it would stay on the island. You don't want to.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
No, it'll be island related.
I mean, most developments, there's that much empty space. When you look at like just the footprints of the buildings themselves, that's not a significant portion of the development. So I'm sure that you could find the acres. It's just, you know, is that spot gonna be conducive for that? Is it near a retention pond? Is it not? You know what I mean? There's some discussions that would be, that you would have to have.
Cause you got roads, you got a lot of things.
So we kind of skipped over some of the white parts, so I'm gonna just,
can I go back to that one
I'm-
paragraph though?
Yep.
We were just looking
Do they have a certain density?
so
per
don't get
acre?
caught up in this wording, because we're asking legal to help us with the wording on that.
at- No, I'm not concerned about code enforcement officer. How are they gonna, they don't really have the expertise in terms of trees. And they're, I guess I'm wondering how
They could just count.
we can count, that's
Yeah.
true.
So, yeah, no, they're gonna do the enforcement, but the advisory board is gonna be involved with all of this.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they would,
The tree advisory board is gonna be involved with, so minimally, we're gonna meet quarterly. So there'll be a tree advisory board that meets quarterly. Anytime there's a clear cutting that occurs, which means, like, let's say South Point did what they just did, as an example, and I probably shouldn't name a name. But they should have got a permit ahead of time, which they shouldn't have in this case. So that's probably a bad example. But if they did that without a permit, then the advisory board will do an assessment, advise the town board. The code enforcement is basically the legal authority that's gonna put out the notices and do the enforcement, and that's the legal process that's involved.
But the permit would also come to the tree advisory board.
Yep.
At the same
So it's gonna go submitted to code enforcement. It'll immediately be, the tree advisory board will be notified. They're gonna quickly have to schedule a meeting, ideally within 5 to 10 days at the most. Because they have 30 days to do all their research, walk the property and figure it all out. Because I mean, it's 30 days is pretty tight. And then the town board has an additional 30 days. So there's a total of 60 days response time. Otherwise, it's deemed approved.
Right.
So it's a pretty tight timeline.
This
so-
is like a lot of water to carry for a volunteer board.
It doesn't happen often. So that's kind of what we're thinking. This is going to be a work in process. If this gets approved, it's a work in process. It's developing the process. It's going to be better than, at least we'll have been notified and have had input before they go and do the clear cutting.
Then this mitigation ratio, if you take out 1 acre, you're gonna provide 4 acres.
Right.
What's the tree density on those acres?
Right.
That's critical.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One tree.
detailed.
Yeah, what
Yeah, you
shapes
could-
exactly?
Yeah, so- So one of the things that you may not be aware of, we do this type of thing with, like with the solar law.
Yeah.
We said, this is kind of what we're thinking. give us the right words, and they give us the right words. So they're gonna give us the right words on that. So that it's enforceable and realistic and measurable and,
Yeah, I know when we did the Fusillo thing, and they made the artificial wetland up there, they had to plant a certain number of water species and stuff.
right.
I mean, the density would depend on the species of tree.
Sure.
No, it's kind of a detailed discussion.
Right, so there's a list of trees that would be used for that replanting. And that's all, that'll all be in this whole thing, ultimately.
But on look back, you'd have to go to historical records, because what if you have a piece of property that didn't have no trees on it?
I'll tell you right now, there's
You know,
1,000 people on this island that knows that piece of property by Tops. They know the
Exactly
day,
right.
they know the day it started getting cut. So I mean, it's not gonna be hard in that regard. I mean, we're not talking removal of, 20 trees on an acre of property. We're talking this massive, that's really what, part of this is, you gotta understand with a law like this, it's what's the intent of the law? It's really, yeah, so it's not a few, removal of a few trees. We're talking, serious commercial level clear cutting. And that's something that will never go unnoticed. I mean, the Facebook posts alone, you'll just go back and say, okay, it started here. Here's the first post. So that's probably the day it started. So we'll know when it started.
So
And there'll be pictures everywhere.
is the town board ready for the feedback from the advisory boards? As in, there's some conflict of interest that always seems to come out.
So
at
let
this
me
point in time.
respond to that. So we're going to be meeting and discussing this again on Monday. We haven't decided on the process, but I know one of the board members suggested that, this is really a combination of taking all the feedback from all the advisory boards, because there was 2 different laws, merging them and coming to a consensus from the town board. So there is a possibility this doesn't get sent back to committee, which we know what happens there. It's killed in committees
I'll
sometimes.
second that possibility.
Yeah, so there's a possibility it might go back into committee and then back into
Here we
the
go
meat
again.
grinder again. Or there's a possibility, and it was suggested, and I know I saw 3 heads nodding, that at least 3, that it may just be a public hearing and we get tons of feedback and we hold meetings afterwards, discuss what that feedback was, make any further modifications, and then roll out the law. So that's a possibility.
The idea, because you had mentioned this before, and I talked to Tom Gotti today.
And none of that's been decided, so that's still, what I just discussed is conceptual. We'll see what's finally decided on how it's gonna proceed forward.
Mike, you need to adjust the microphone. I think others are fading again.
Sorry if I don't face it to these guys.
Actually, I should wait and make my comment, maybe when you're done with.
So yeah, let me just go through the permit itself, because that's some of what we did kind of skip over. So as part of a required site division, an applicant for a tree removal permit shall be made the town code enforcement department and forwarded to the tree advisory. It's going to include the name, site, purpose, an attached tree removal plan of the area indicating the following: the approximate location and number of trees. So there's the inventory that we were talking about. Location of any improvements on the property existing or proposed. Topographic information, any additional information the town board may deem necessary. So there's your tree inventory, because that was one of the things I wanted to make sure was in there, and it is in there. So your questions, Diane.
I looked at the copy before you met today. I looked at the old one.
Right.
The last time you had a meeting, because I was there. I guess some of the later stuff, but do you still have the appendix that was?
That got removed.
Oh, okay.
So what we've decided, there's an appendix with the scoring that was in the one that Diane saw. So that's actually going to be a living document, because if you put it in the law, you can't change it. So instead, we're going to make it a living document. It'll reside, the tree advisory board will probably be the ones managing that. And, chances are we're gonna say, hey, we forgot this category or that
Yeah, was
category.
one of my
And it's
concerns.
basically a score of 1 to 4, low, medium, high, or whatever, if you think about a rating system for, the hardship for the person, there was a number, it's really all these categories that I listed a minute ago. Right, it's a rubric. The extent, so it's these types of categories. So we would rate on a score of 1 to 4, 4 being the most critical, the extent to which use of the property requires cutting down, killing, or destroying trees. So all these different things that are on the list, we would score. The tree advisory board would score and probably give some additional commentary to.
Okay, so I was thinking about-
Mike, I got a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sam.
That number 250 is about 200 years old. And can we adjust it for inflation, like the 500?
I could ask our attorneys what's normal. It does look like that's what, like that number actually came out of the Hamburg law. So it's kind of what a lot of places are doing, but even if you put it at 500, it's almost 6 one way, half a dozen the other. That is no way is causing any enforcement. They'll laugh at. Even
Yeah,
if it's
but
per day, it's still minor.
on the other hand, the town gets 500 instead of 250.
Yeah. So yeah, I could ask that.
We build our reserve for planting more.
Right. Any other ones? Anything else, Sam? That's a good question, actually. So 500 versus 200.
So at this point, you feel like all the other board members are on board with it? Excuse me.
No, I can't say that. I can say that we're arm wrestling,
Okay.
but we're making progress. I mean, to me, this law, and it's very similar to what we did even with the solar law, because we did a lot of arm wrestling. If you watch,
Right.
there was some very, very heated debates for the solar law, but I think we ended up with a very good end product.
I just want, just because
And sometimes, even though it's heated, people are making points. As long as people are listening and not interrupting, hopefully we're all learning in that
Right.
process.
I guess when I talked to Tom about it, because he was interested in me getting my feedback, he was possibly, maybe he's changed his mind, suggesting that we take a step back and not try to hurry this through, and not so that it will be just exactly what the town wants. One thing I suggested was.
We've been in that mode for 20 years.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't
Let's
work.
call it- but what I-
Mike,
Yes.
can I add one more little piece?
Hold on just 1 second. Let Diane finish, but then it's your turn.
One thing I thought of, but maybe it's not appropriate anymore, is I'd be willing to call these other towns that have made tree ordinances and ask them what's worked for you and what hasn't worked for you.
Yeah.
That's another form of research, but,
I called a couple myself, but a lot of them were
Yeah.
just, like in,
It's just
on
doing
public
business.
public
property.
yeah, this is so unique because it's.
So I mean, I agree with Diane about there's a lot we could do. But then part of me is like, this happens whenever there's a massive clear cutting. And I think the sooner you have the public hearing,
Yeah.
the more you're gonna get the people of Grand Island out here to speak and let them influence the board members as to what they want.
Right.
Because obviously you guys are elected.
I do think, unlike the solar law, where we put a moratorium, which gave us the luxury of going slow, the longer we wait, the more destruction that's occurring.
I
That
think-
where we could have maybe mitigated it,
Right.
we may not have stopped it, probably wouldn't have stopped it, but maybe we could have mitigated it and had more say and, done, at least got some kind of a benefit out of it through,
And I
some
think this
replanting
meets-
of trees
meets
and
a
things
lot
like
of what we wanted originally, don't you guys?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, if you
This is
go
actually stronger than 2 years ago, right now.
I have a concern. Okay, so now we have the benefit of
history in the last 2 years of these enormous developments, and I'm talking about Long Road. The thought of a volunteer advisory board turning around in 30 days, the information that would be required for a project of that scope seems destined to failure, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that you would have to make some kind of a carve out based on the size of the parcel. Because you're talking about getting access to it, depending on the time of year that may or may not be.
Yeah, that's true too,
Possible.
right? Yeah.
You're talking about some sort of inventory so that you know what you're talking about. And then all the other information that has to be determined. And when you have a development that big, you have a developer with big guns. And the developer I'm talking about has succeeded in terms of lawsuits in Amherst on this very topic.
Yeah.
So that's something we all, that's something to think about other communities. I think it's very close to being there. I think the suggestion to have public input is important. And I think
Yes.
finding out how other locales have prevailed, I think would be a benefit to fine tune it.
Right.
And
I do know that we did that back in 2018 and 2019, because I do remember at least one or two, I
We
think
did.
Bob did as well. I know.
Yeah, I
Right.
held a couple.
Mhm.
So we did get feedback.
Yeah.
Looking at this law, looking at
And the attorneys will know about.
like the Hamburg law is more aggressive than this.
Yeah.
But I think the reality is you're never going to have every I dotted and T crossed. It's, can we mitigate it? How much can we mitigate it? And, are you going to be able to go through and know every tree, every, historically large tree and, a 60-acre lot? 60 acres is a huge property.
Yeah.
And,
Even bigger.
realistically, you got to do this in a very short period of time because you can't hold the developers hostage in this process either. So I think that the thing is, right now we have nothing. At least
Mike?
if we can start having some input prior to the clear cutting, getting the notification, letting the public know, sharing with the public what the plan is and how we're trying to mitigate it. The developer, as part of the permitting process, has to describe what they're going to do to mitigate the clear cutting process. So yes, go ahead, Sam. Sorry, I forgot you were going to speak.
Mike, one of the things I was going to say, I mean, all the comments you've heard so far are great, but we need urgency. I see what you are doing here, Mike, as progress. Having gone through so many other iterations, this is progress, but there's urgency to keep pushing it. Especially, I don't know, your term on the board is limited, right?
Yes,
Mike?
it is.
So that's the, a big urgency to get this done because we don't know how committed the next liaison might be.
Right.
Agreed. Public opinion, I mean, right now,
People are
how the-
fired up.
We're gonna need a
how the
really
people
big
feel about the
facility.
green space here on Grand Island. And so, I agree with Sam, urgency, there's a little urgency here.
Right.
And if you let that urgency go away, then you're back into the kicking it around to committee again, and it never gets voted on. We would just like to see something like this get to a vote.
It's regrettable it got killed back in 2019.
Well, and it's important the public knows that they're towns with tree ordinances have the opportunity to apply for grant money to help with planting trees to offset some of the destruction. But we're not even eligible to apply for that money without an ordinance in place. So the longer we sit without an ordinance, that's just less money for the town to offset the destruction of our trees. So that's something that you got to keep in mind. So that adds to that urgency.
But what I can remember from that last public meeting that we had, people said that the ordinance didn't have enough teeth in it, okay? And I mean, this one is, you can't prevent people from clear cutting, but you can negotiate, or I shouldn't say, a plan that is more acceptable, to the town and to the public.
And, in that debate that we had earlier today at the beginning of the meeting, Tom made a point of there's no teeth in this. And as a result of that discussion, that's where we got the 4-1, which there's some precedent for that. And I can't remember what was cited. It's in the meeting that was discussed. But there's some precedent for that 4-1 replacement. So that is teeth. That's a pretty strong teeth. I mean, that's pretty sharp teeth is what I should say.
Yeah.
I mean, if they illegally clear cut an acre, they're gonna have to replant 4 acres
Right.
as part of preparation for a site plan, et cetera, without a permit.
Right. Otherwise, you can't build.
Right.
And if that's as stringent, or more so than other localities, then it's not inviting them to come and take advantage of,
Right.
At least you can
Now,
point to
that's
that.
let's go through the grinder of an attorney to say, can we legally
Legally
do that? But there's some reasons for thinking that we can, because we've seen it somewhere else, so.
And the 5-year look back's important because if that doesn't stay
Yep.
in, everything's gonna be cleared in the next 6 months.
Quick cut it now.
Right. Well, they would clear cut, wait 2 years, and then submit a site plan, no permit.
Do you think the developers have a conscience? To take some of these environmental things into account, because I mean,
I do think some are very environmentally conscious. I think there's some that needs to be dragged into
through
that.
it, right.
And this is that tool to drag them into that conversation. But I
But at
do
least-
think there's developers that are very community oriented, very environmentally oriented, but the reality is if you're building a,
You want to do
You know,
the lowest cost.
right,
I always remember when Jim Sharp presented the long-range plan at Kegabyne, and the first thing he said was, this plan allows Grand Island to tell developers what we want as opposed to developers telling us what they're going to do. And I think we need to support that concept. And this is one way to do that.
right.
But at least you got teeth, and you can point to that those new teeth in this ordinance.
Just to comment on that a little bit too, is the reality is I do think certain areas were zoned
Mhm.
inappropriately.
Mhm.
I mean, some of these green, lush, beautiful properties, we should have, probably said 1 house and 10 acres. And then you're saving a lot of the green space. And sadly enough, look what's happening at South Point. I think that was just a bad zoning for that area, right?
But
But
we're moving forward.
yeah, but I mean, that's what any town board is going to be up against is the pre-existing zoning. You can't just go and change it because if someone's already invested $1 million and plans on building a multi-million-dollar development, you can't just change the zoning because that's a taking and then you're in serious liability situation.
Isn't there an interest of the town board or municipalities to be constantly increasing the tax base of the town? And if that's not the case, what's offsetting that?
See, I'll tell you right now, and I'm a pro-business person, but I can tell you, the only reason why you need to continually increase your tax base, because let's face it, through inflation and everything else, your tax base is increasing continually regardless, because the properties are gaining in value. So the only reason the argument for what you just said is if you want the government to grow faster. So as long as you're being responsible, you can have no growth in the next 5 years, as long as you're spending responsibly and within the boundaries of inflation, you shouldn't have a problem in theory. So, but people will argue, oh, you got to continually build, or you're going to go bankrupt.
Right,
No,
right.
you don't, because otherwise, then every single inch of this island will at some point have to be developed, or our government won't be big enough for us.
Right.
So,
So
So-
this doesn't have to go to any of the other boards at this point.
there's no process decided yet. So that's
Oh.
still an arm wrestling match to be had. So
And then obviously setting a public hearing.
we are making, I do feel like we're making progress. I'm hoping that the next step will be a public meeting rather than going to committee. Because
I think that would be.
Because the
good.
biggest concern is that's how this thing's been killed time after time. It keeps going back to committee. And it's been through the grinder.
And you want a version
One of the things
for the public to consider that has some teeth in it as opposed to the versions that they were presented with at the last public hearing.
right.
Because that'll be their first thing.
One of the things that one of the board members said earlier today, which resonated to me, was there's a point where the town board was elected to represent the folks on the island, have to roll up their sleeves, come to a consensus and introduce a law. This thing's been through the grinder for so long. I think we're at that point where we need to introduce the law. So will I be able to win that debate? We'll see what happens.
I mean, I agree with that sentiment. I'm always very cautious about this law going to advisory boards where if they vote yes or no, it actually affects their livelihood. Whereas here on a conservation board, we vote yes, we say yes or no on how we advise. It's not affecting our pocketbook.
I do think, just to be fair though, everybody has a different bias. So
I'm not
by
saying there's not
nature-
bias,
Right.
I'm just talking about money. And so, you know, that's,
Well, so they're advocates for development, we're advocates for the environment. That's their role, is to be advocates for development. And we need to understand that that's part of their role.
responsible
that's
development
okay.
should include some environmental
Yes.
people and you know,
Right, I
I
agree.
just think that a good board is representative of the population.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't matter which advisory board they're advising you, you want the best advice possible. You should have advisory boards that represent the people
I do think
of the island.
when I watch, because I've sat through many planning meetings, and what they do there is truly incredible, the amount of time they put in and everything else. Admittedly, they're not sitting there worrying about, you know, the trees in the environment. It's really about trying to design or develop and put a plan together that fits best with the community and surrounding areas and improves property.
I'm not speaking ill
So
of
that's
them.
really where their focus is, a very different focus than ours. We're really the advocates to press all the other boards to, you know, be aware of these particular concerns. So that's really what our role is. So
But now's the time to strike, because
Yeah.
you're never gonna have a better time than this.
Yeah.
And like Ed says, you got the public, it's, you know, I'm sure people are upset.
I think a lot of
What's
people in the
going on?
public don't even know that there ever was a discussion of ordinances in the past. A lot of people seem not aware of that.
yeah,
You know, for us, it was like, oh, our life for a couple of years, but
right.
a lot of people are clueless. And so this is a good time.
So it's going to be interesting to see where we go from
I
here.
think it'll go.
My gut feeling is last time if it would have went to a vote, it would have gone.
Yeah.
So ultimately it's getting to the vote.
Right.
The getting to the vote is a success and I hope it gets there. So just know, you know, anybody who's tuning into this on YouTube, I don't know if we have a following on YouTube, but you know, hopefully you can encourage your elected officials to get this thing to a public hearing. That would be in your best interest if you wanted to prevent things like this happening in the near future. So that would be the advice.
And
Oh,
big thing, you don't want it going to committee all the time, because it never goes anywhere.
and
Except around in a circle.
This thing's been through committee. This is probably fivefold more times than any other
yeah.
law in the history of this town.
All right.
Most laws go through once. This one's gone through for 20 years now, and it dies in committee.
So
And that's part of the game is, oh, let's send it back to the committee. That way we don't have to vote on it and go on record.
okay. So we're nearing 2 hours here. So obviously we're going to revisit this all the time, but please send us emails and, you know, once you get the lawyered version up, we'd like to just kind of take a look at that just to kind of see the nuances and things that go into that law.
Sounds good.
I have well, we're speaking to the public, but there's 5 propositions on this year's ballot. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I think it's the third one. Every New Yorker has the right to clean air and water, and that gets written into the Constitution. That's something that I think everybody should consider. Those
What
little,
does that mean?
Those
Yeah,
little words
Right, exactly.
hold,
I'm sorry.
hold the developer.
We probably shouldn't politic in
I know.
a meeting like this, so.
But
But that is
It's
so
like the-
nebulous. It's like,
it's like
I have the right to breathe. Well, unless of course someone shoots me tomorrow,
well,
but there's
Yeah,
already
just took the
laws in
rights
place
away.
for that.
Read it really carefully.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very carefully.
so
Does that mean you can't drive your lawnmower tomorrow? So be aware of that.
I
Absolutely
I
not.
gladly
You are
not.
polluting the
You gotta get
environment with your.
electric in California.
All right.
You need electric.
I
Oh,
would-
you-
would buy an
there-
electric
It's
lawnmower the next
illegal
day.
to have a
You can buy
gas
it
powered
now,
gas
Listen,
lawnmower.
Our hearts go
And
out
it-
to the people in California right now because they're experiencing more devastating weather as a
Oh,
result
And-
of climate change.
And if we
So,
want to drive to
let's-
Florida in an electric car, how
Go ahead.
many days is it gonna take?
Right.
The top end, 400 miles.
Yeah, but now you're getting those cadmium batteries that have a less than 15-minute full charge. So
Yeah,
I
but
mean, that's
15 minutes. How many times are you waiting at the gas station in line? Now make it 15 minutes instead of 3 minutes.
well, if you stay overnight, you can plug it into the 110.
And on
I'm
top of
talking about
that,
the high-speed charges. That's
Yeah, a lot of
Anyway.
those start charge stations,
All right.
they're owned by Tesla.
so we can turn this into an environmental science
And-
discussion, which I'd be happy to do,
and
but we're moving on.
if-
We are moving
if
on.
everyone on your block is on that same charger, your grid is down.
No, it is not. It's a 110. You can plug it into a 110 outlet.
I have a car that I plug into my.
Mike, that's
outlet.
wrong.
that's 8
Anyway,
hours.
I digress. Before
That
our
takes 8 hours. He said
liaison
15
says
minutes,
more
that's a
false
220.
items.
So I'm not wrong. It's a 220 if you're gonna do it in 15
That's a
minutes.
lot of power.
The high-speed charge, different, but I'd be happy to discuss that. We are not meeting on Thanksgiving. I hope
See
you know
what you
that.
started?
1, 2, 3, 4, the 4th Thursday of November is Thanksgiving. You guys want to meet then? Okay, so,
I'll bring the maple pie, maybe.
So here's the challenge. I think the third week is architectural review, but we could meet up in the courtroom and just hold the meeting up there. So, which if there's a developer, it's probably better because
yeah, you get more space.
more space and we can spread out and
All right,
What
so
date is in?
the 18th, Thursday, so if we move from the 4th Thursday to the 3rd Thursday, the 18th, does that work for you, Mike?
we'll have to. Ooh, November 18th, yes.
November 18th.
Yeah, only if it is 20.
You read my
You gotta
mind.
leave, that's right.
And then,
I'm off the whole next week. That's why I said, ooh,
December, the meeting would be on the 23rd.
so
which
sorry,
is
it's
a little-
November, what is it again?
18th. November 18th would be our next meeting.
18th. Okay.
We can,
What's the third Thursday in December?
the 3rd Thursday is the 16th of December, so if we can move the 23rd of December to the 16th of December.
And just so that everyone knows, we won't be down here. It's more like, we'll have to see. The architectural review will probably be meeting here, so we'll probably be up in the courtroom, but I'll confirm that with everybody.
Okay.
And I'll let Rhonda know.
All right, is everybody okay with those dates?
Are we doing gift exchange?
There you go.
Secret Santa.
Think of Sam.
He's dressing up as Santa.
No, you ruined the surprise.
Oh,
He needs some milk. though.
All right, additional news? Announcements? Anything else from the town board? I know a lot of development happening.
We hit everything there. Well, not everything. We hit the big ones. There's a lot of small ones.
So I guess, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
Suzanne
adjourn.
motions,
I'll second it.
Jim seconds, all in favor? Aye.
Oops.